when you took part in the Olympics because of COVID, there were less people there, families were not allowed, whereas at the World Cup, you would often have a lot more people. So for some reason, the World Cup felt a lot bigger and there was a lot more pressure in that sense, where the Olympics, you were just allowed to...
To some extent. I mean, I think internally I would say overall, it was like a really good introduction to the Olympics because there wasn't as much distraction, I would say, in certain elements. I mean, there was distraction when it came to COVID, but otherwise, in terms of having a ton of friends there that aren't normally at events, or like people that I want to, I guess, spend time with, but also like celebrate the moment with, that all wasn't there. And that was kind of saved for after the event. So I would say World Cups all throughout last season, the audience or like spectators were pretty sparse, with the exception of probably the US World Cup. But so we were kind of used to it going into the games, but in that sense, it did take away a little bit of the pressure, and it was more about how I wanted my personal process to go, which was fun.
This started with the question of what you feel when you look down and just before a run, and you mentioned it's a mixture of feelings. Of course, you're quite excited these days. How does that contrast with the moment at the Olympics or at the World Cup itself? Were you excited, or were the nerves just taking over? The few videos that I've watched of you competing, it seems like you've taken a moment to just take a breath, calm yourself, and you also speak to yourself a bit. So what exactly are you feeling in those moments at the tournaments in particular? And what do you say to yourself?
I say to myself usually my performance statement, which is I'm resilient and a great competitor, attack. And then usually I'll have just like one or two keywords, which kind of focuses my attention on what I'm going to do in the run. So that'll be literally just one word or two words on the only thing, like the biggest thing that I'm going to focus on in that run. And then just when I think before I start my competition run, those moments before I think are really important. And I think that in the past, I've kind of like gotten in the habit of getting a little bit stiff right out of the gate, like in the years probably prior to the past two, like 2019, I would say, and before. I would be like a little bit stiff in the gate and then not have that feeling of being in the zone and being able to immediately start fluidly skiing my run. So I think that those like composure breaths are a really good way for me to kind of zero in on what I want to do and get my heart rate lower before I go.
Very interesting to know what goes through your mind at an event like the Olympics. I'm nowhere close to being an Olympian myself. I read once that there was a sport called poodle clipping. So who could clip the most amount of poodles, the dogs, within 2 hours. I'm sure if that was a sport,
that's a good sport. Yeah.
Even if it was a sport today, I still wouldn't make it in the Olympics. So it's very nice to know like what goes through your mind. This is the closest I'll get to it.